Hey guys, Sherlock here. So I've been looking over the Flail skill tree, trying to come up with how it's going to fit within the dungeon meta and PVE in general. To be honest, the only way I see it becoming viable is a mitigation tank option. I don't really see it being viable as a healing option at this stage. So kind of the couple ways I see it being viable is a paladin tank, lifestaff Flail. I've got a video running lifestaff Void Gauntlet on my YouTube as a paladin tank, and you can actually hold aggro really well just with the inbuilt healer aggro. So I think a mix between the lifestaff and the Flail with the spice, you should be able to hold enough aggro, especially with the taunts with the Flail, and then just run 4 DPS. Or you could go down either the sword and shield hammer route with the Flail and use it as kind of a mitigation style. So you could either go heavy with an elemental protection on the shield, or you could try and go for like maybe a high con light with a few abilities. You got reinforced vitality that gives you an extra 25% of your physical damage as health. We have our taunts on barrage and warding bludgeon. They're both pretty decent taunts, with barrage being a gap closer to be able to get in there quickly if you're running heavy. Try and keep up with your team. Vital suppressant is just a nice little damage mitigation over 50% health. Just kind of all adds up those small damage mitigation numbers. A lot of on the Flail, there's some cooldowns. There are a lot of stamina abilities which I think are necessary. So we're more going down the route of trying to assist the team with weakens. So that's why we've got Arcane Smite over here, which will help stack impairment, which gives a 10% weaken per stack up to 3 stacks. So for that we're running Arcane Smite, and we're running Spiky Impairment, which when you hit above 90% health does a 10% stack of that impairment. I think this will be viable with any shield choice. I think it depends on the damage numbers. Depending on how high the damage numbers are, you could look at doing a light tank round shield and try and main hand the Flail, or you could try and just go for a heavy build, you know, full elemental aversion, and go for a full sort of mitigation, which is why we're looking at human shield. Hitting a target with an ability while within 6 meters of an ally applies a status effect linking yourself and a single ally to each other for 5 seconds. While the effect is active, the ally will only take 50% of the incoming damage and cause you to inherit 35% of the incoming damage. So that, along with reinforced vitality, vital suppressant, that's just going to help keep you alive with their damage mitigation numbers. And there's a lot of builds in fortify, which will be really important if you're running heavy. That'll make a bigger impact. If you're running light armor, it's not going to matter so much. So at the moment, this is kind of the skill tree that I can see working. There is always the option to use it as a healing weapon, which I don't think is the right choice. I believe this here will assist your team the most while being able to keep up your taunts, keep up the weakens, and actually give your team slight amount of empowerment as well. I believe this one here, best friends. Upon ability activation, a nearby ally within 6 meters is selected and you become linked to them. While this connection is active, they gain empower, increasing their base damage by 15%, and you both gain damage absorption, reducing the damage taken by 10% for 8 seconds. Or until players are more than 6 meters apart. So that just adds into that damage mitigation again. So I think that's going to be the way to play the Flail. It's not going to be a healer offhand. The Void Gauntlet's still going to be the healer offhand. You want them on maining the Void Gauntlet to keep that Oblivion uptime, the Blade uptime with the Rens. You're not going to see PVE healers running Flail. Right, so now moving on to the attribute changes. They have added a whole new tier of attributes at 25 and 350, which is going to open up some more options. And at 700 gear score, you're also going to have another 100 attribute points to play with. So in the strength, it's these low down ones that are still kind of important. The light, the heavy attack damage, physical damage. Up at this high end, it's not so important. I think you've got the extra damage to the final attack and the extra base damage while under 50% health. I don't think that's going to be very viable. So I don't actually think you're going to really want to be running more than 200 strength in most builds. Whereas the dex, on the other hand, you're probably going to be wanting to hit this 350 mark if you can with your greatsword, your hatchet, your sword and shield. The higher crit chance is going to be really important with the likes of Keen being nerfed and Keen awareness. And also the cleansing of crowd controls is going to be really big, especially on nature and ice weeks. It's going to be super powerful. So all of the dex perks are actually looking really good. Moving on to intelligence next. So intelligence is looking really good as well. So I think rapier is going to be crazy strong in season 3. If you can hit, I think 350, 250, or the other way around, you're going to do some pretty decent damage with the rapier. So there's a lot more just smaller bonuses staggered throughout here. Extra 5% to backstab, extra 5% with a dot. You know, you've got your bleeds on the rapier, extra 10% to elemental attacks. You're not really using your light attacks that often. Maybe if you're doing an evade build. Extra 15% to elemental damage, 30% duration applied to dots, 10% damage to targets below 50% health. That's pretty big, and 15% ability damage, which is crazy when it comes to flurry and flourish and finish. So I think that 350 mark, yeah, I think that 250, 350 mark is going to be really important when it comes to running rapier. Focus, there's nothing really crazy here. I think we're going to see healers running a lot lower focus, probably around that 200 mark rather than the 265 mark that we'll be seeing in season 2. Just the perks don't seem to be that viable, and 200 focus really is enough to keep your team alive with proper grouping in CC. So I don't think we're going to be seeing healers really run more than 200 focus. I would say we're probably going to be looking at kind of 200 focus, let's say 100 con, depending on how hard the content actually is at that M3 level. And I would say everything else is going to be pumped into int for that void gauntlet damage. Then when it comes to con, the 50 con mark is actually super viable now. Before, it just used to be the same as this 25, the extra health consumables. But at 50 con, you actually get 10% extra physical armor when at or above 50% health. So 50 con could actually be a nice middle ground of doing high level content, while just trying to be a little bit safe. You know, you're doing your score runs, there's a new person in the team who hasn't quite clicked yet, that 50 con mark could actually be super viable. And then we've got a new perk introduced at the 350 mark, which is 15% damage reduction while you have active grit, which I think is going to be really important when it comes to things like rapier. On the flurry, you have grit. So I'm going to do another video on it. I've mentioned it in the last video, but I really think rapier tank is going to be crazy. So this could come into that as well. So yeah, we've had a bit of a look at the attribute points. We've had a little bit of a look at the flurry skill tree. There's some nice changes there. There is a lot of kind of empty changes as well that I've noticed. There's a lot of extra weapons, perks, etc. that it looks good. Hey, we've added all these new things, but I don't think they're actually going to be really used on a daily basis or in the meta. So there's some nice changes, but try not to get overwhelmed. We'll quickly work out what the meta is, and we'll keep you updated with that. Alright, now we're going to quickly go through some of the new weapons and armor, have a quick look at the perks, and just see how viable they actually are. So we'd start with just the butcher here. It actually looks pretty decent. Bloodletting, bleeds last 33% longer. Jagged worlds, your whirling blade adds a bleed. Empowering whirling blade, keenly jagged. It actually looks like it could be a pretty fun little sword. It is missing the likes of like enchanted bits and pieces. Possibly if you look at getting those on the shield, if you can get your vicious, your enchanted, and your round shield, then this could possibly be quite a good DPS weapon. But I think as a kind of a bleed build, that could be quite fun. Moving on to Spark of Mjolnir. So this one here converts 99% of your damage to lightning, and you deal 20% more lightning damage with both weapons. So this could be super interesting in your ancient dungeons. The fact that it's missing anything like enchanted, trenchant strikes, anything like that. I don't know if it will be viable as a DPS weapon. I still don't think hammer is going to out DPS the likes of a spear or a greatsword, but this could be something just fun to play around with, or using this as your offhand, so you can then use your main hand like a greatsword to then get that extra lightning damage, or a spear, sorry. Could possibly go like spear. Need a bit of testing around it to see how viable that actually is, but it's a neat idea. I feel like I'm going to say that about a lot of these weapons and armor. I don't know how I feel about this Int Great Axe. All the PvPers are saying that it's crazy, it's broken, it's going to be so good. It might be a nice offhand for a rapier within the PVE scene. But at the end of the day, you're not DPSing with your greatsword. Great Axe. It's just there for grabs, maelstroms, and the fact it doesn't have enfeebling maelstrom or anything, I don't think you're going to see this too much in the PvE scene, to be honest. Moving on to the wall. Anyone that knows me knows that I don't like blocking. I think tanks shouldn't just stand there blocking, so I don't have many feelings for this. You get some base damage reduction, you can't dodge, and you have 33% more stamina. So you're going to do less damage, you can't dodge, but you can stand there and right click slightly more. I do like the chromatic ward, take 25% less damage from all elemental sources, that's really strong. But apart from that, I think it's kind of a useless weapon, and I think it's a waste of an artifact. The finisher almost is really good. The fact it's got deadly flourish on it kills this weapon. Attacks against bleeding targets deal 15% more damage and reduce flourish's cooldown by 5%. It's good. The Kintondo is really good. Sorry. Smile Yuki's spamming me. Bruh, I'm recording. Chill. Everything. My focus. Oh, smile. Yuki fucking spamming me. Alright. So with this rapier, I think the flourish on the weapon kind of kills it. If it wasn't for that, this weapon would be perfect. You do the extra 15% more damage to bleeding targets. You're always going to have bleeding targets, and there's a slight cooldown on deadly flourish. The Kintondo is nice to have on there as well with the weakness. But I think keenly empowered is super important on a rapier, just the lack of empower. I don't think this is quite it. It's almost there, and it's like almost good, but I don't think this is going to be the one you want to be using. Yeah, just with the flourish with the extra damage, it's actually the finish where most of your damage comes from. So although at first glance this looks like a really good rapier, I think it's actually a pass. Alright, this is the one weapon that actually got me quite excited. Serenity, the greatsword. So it comes with offensive stance with an extra 2% in power per attack for 5 seconds, maximum of 10 stacks. I imagine you'll probably be able to keep up about 3 or 4 stacks. So you're basically going to be at a power cap with this weapon anyway. So it's a nice have to keep you up there. It's not as broken as that looks. What I really like is trenchant strikes and trenchant crits. Heavy melee attacks deal 23% extra damage, and the crits deal an extra 34% extra damage. So with this, you're going to want to be making sure you've got a keen awareness ring on, and getting as many backstabs as you can, and this will be crazy damage. This here is going to be really good. This is one of the artifacts I think that a lot of people are going to be trying to farm, especially with that random perk. Who knows what we're going to be able to get with that. This is going to be a really fun greatsword to play with. Nimble leather coat. So this one reduces your max cooldowns by 10%, has refreshing on it and health. I think this is going to be really nice with that random perk. If you can have one of the wards drop on it, like elemental aversion, grit ward. Moving on to the hunter's claw. Looking at it, my first thought with this one is the worm raid I think this would be really nice for the worm raid with the penetrating rapid shot, the vicious, the keen, and then the keenly jagged is just going to be a nice little sugar on top. But even just having these 3 perks together here, it's going to be really nice within the worm raid, I believe. Now moving on, there is the new faction weapons that are all at 675 gear score. They all have enchanted, keen, and vicious. So if you want a quick head start to 675, all the faction gear is actually looking reasonably decent, but it also isn't cheap. So like the weapons are 30,000 tokens and 10,000 coins. I don't know how hard it's going to be to get to 675 gear score, but this could be an initial option for us to get starting gear, which also brings us to the armor, which actually has health, refreshing, and enchanted ward on it, which is actually a pretty decent gear set. So as a starting tank gear set, this could be pretty decent, 4.5k per piece. It's just whether how hard it is to actually get to that 675, and if you're better putting the time you would getting those faction tokens into just getting up your gear score and running the higher dungeons. Alright guys, thank you for watching. We are working on a new website, newworldbuilds.com. I'm going to try and have this ready for season 3 with all this information in there. Meta builds, guides for each dungeon. It is still under development. We do have some skill trees set up and some builds set up for season 2. But my main goal is getting this all live for season 3 for you guys. So it's going to be the go-to place for all of your information. Alright, if you made it this far in the video, thank you very much. Drop us a follow, subscribe to the channel, and come visit us on Twitch. We have a great time over there. We've got a good community, and I'll see you next time.